I first noticed it on a Monday morning. My Wi-Fi cut out mid-meeting, video froze, audio dropped, and I was left staring at the little spinning wheel of death. I knew it wasn't my router. I'd just upgraded to a dual-band mesh system 2 weeks ago. Top of the line. I work in cybersecurity, tech is my thing. So no, this wasn't some oops, forgot to plug it in situation. By the third time it happened that week, I was convinced someone was screwing with me. And I had a pretty good idea who. Her name was Harriet Holcomb, president of our HOA. Mid-50s, wore her blonde hair like a helmet, and had a voice that sounded like gravel in a blender. She lived 2 houses down and had made it her full-time job to monitor everyone's compliance. She hated me. Maybe because I didn't mow my lawn in diagonal stripes. Maybe because I didn't attend her monthly mandatory community brunches. Or maybe because I had the audacity to install solar panels without kissing her ring first. Either way, she had it out for me. The final straw came on Friday afternoon. I'd just settled into my chair, coffee in hand, ready to join a virtual panel on data privacy, when the internet cut out again. I stormed outside, phone in hand, hotspot on, and walked straight to the utility box near the sidewalk where the shared telecom lines ran. Sure enough, the cover was wide open. My router cable had been yanked out. Again. And leaning over it, holding a clipboard like she always did, was Harriet. "You're trespassing," I said, voice low. She didn't even flinch. "You've got unauthorized hardware connected to the community lines, Martin." "That's a violation of the HOA's infrastructure guidelines." "There are no infrastructure guidelines, Harriet. I've read the bylaws cover to cover." "You must have missed Article 7, Section 4. There is no Article 7. She shrugged and walked away like she hadn't just sabotaged my workday for the 3rd time in a week. I went back inside and pulled the security footage from my front porch cam. There she was, 3 separate instances crouching at the utility box, yanking my cable, and even smugly wiping her hands on her khaki capris. I copied the footage to a flash drive. That night, I called in a favor. My buddy Jasper runs a tech support service called Tech Troopers. Mostly installs home networking, that kind of thing. But they do special projects on the side for guys like me who need a little creative help. "You want me to what?" he said, laughing over the phone. "I want a signal jammer," I said. "Small, directional. Something that'll scramble her Wi-Fi signal without touching mine." "You planning to bury it in her roses?" "She's got a ceramic frog in her yard, right by the porch. Perfect hiding spot." There was a pause, then Jasper said, "I'll have my guys out there tomorrow night." Saturday morning, Harriet was in full busybody mode. Clipboard, tennis visor, barking at a kid on a scooter for riding too fast. She didn't notice the 2 Tech Troopers guys posing as pest control specialists sweeping her front yard for moles. They planted the jammer inside the ceramic frog. Little solar-powered unit. Range of 50 feet. Only targeted the 5 GHz band. Her smart devices, her doorbell cam, her Wi-Fi thermostat, everything went haywire. By Sunday noon, she was on our HOA Facebook page melting down about foreign interference and cyber attacks. I watched from my living room with a bag of popcorn. Then she did something I didn't expect. She marched right up to my door and pounded on it hard enough to rattle the frame. I opened it, calm as ever. "You think this is funny?" she barked, holding her phone up. "None of my systems are working. I can't even arm my security cameras." "Sounds like you've got a connectivity issue," I said, sipping my coffee. "You should check your router. Or maybe stop tampering with other people's." Her face flushed. "You have no proof of that." I handed her a USB stick. "Security footage. 3 separate days. You tampering with the utility box. I've already sent copies to our ISP, the HOA board, and the city's utility oversight department." She snatched the drive like it was poisoned. "I'm the president of this HOA," she hissed. "And I'm a guy who knows how to file a harassment claim." She stormed off, spewing something about attorneys and protocol breaches. I thought that'd be the end of it. But Harriet wasn't done. On Monday, I got a notice taped to my garage door. A formal violation. Apparently, my roof-mounted solar panels constituted an unauthorized modification to the exterior aesthetic of the home and would need to be removed within 15 days or I'd face fines of up to $500 a day. I laughed. She was digging her own grave. I'd already gotten city approval for the panels. The HOA had no jurisdiction over energy systems since the state passed a law protecting residential solar installations. She was bluffing, again, probably counting on me not knowing my rights. Unfortunately for her, I did. But I wasn't going to just defend myself. I was going to bury her. I pulled out my laptop and started compiling everything. Footage of her tampering with the utility box. Screenshots of her bogus violation notice. Copies of the state energy law. And then I got an idea. I reached out to the other residents. Most of them hated Harriet, but were too scared to say anything. I started small, just my next-door neighbor, Greg. Retired firefighter. He'd had a run-in with Harriet last year over his American flag being too large. "She cut your internet line?" he said, wide-eyed. "That's nuts. She's crossed the line. I'm filing a formal complaint. And if I get enough signatures, I can trigger a recall vote on the HOA board." Greg grinned. "You get the paperwork, I'll sign first." By Thursday, I had 23 signatures. I only needed 25. That's when Harriet started going door to door, trying to smear me. Called me a cyber vigilante. Said I was planting devices in people's bushes. One poor lady called me in tears because she was afraid I'd hacked her thermostat. But the tide was turning. People were sick of her. And then, like a gift from the tech gods, my Wi-Fi went out again. Only this time, I hadn't touched a thing. I ran outside and caught Harriet crouched at the utility box again, with a pair of wire cutters.
She froze when she saw me.
"Call it maintenance," she said weakly. I didn't bother arguing. I dialed the non-emergency police line. When the officer showed up, I handed over everything: footage, the USB stick, the fake violation letter, and now a fresh charge of tampering with telecom lines. When he cuffed her in front of the cul-de-sac, it was better than I imagined. "Wait till my lawyer hears about this," she shrieked as they put her in the cruiser. I leaned against my mailbox and said, "Tell him to bring a power strip. You're gonna need it." I had 25 signatures by sundown. The morning after Harriet's very public ride in the back of a patrol car, the neighborhood felt lighter. I walked out to grab the paper. Yes, I still read the actual thing. "Don't judge me," and half the block waved at me. People who used to close their garages the moment they saw me outside were suddenly friendly. A woman walking her golden retriever even handed me a pastry box from the local bakery and muttered, "Thanks for finally doing something." But I wasn't celebrating yet. Harriet was petty, but she wasn't dumb. Not completely. She knew how to manipulate systems, loop people into bureaucratic knots, and bury her tracks under layers of HOA doublespeak. And even though she'd been arrested for tampering with telecom infrastructure, the charge was a misdemeanor. She'd be back. Her kind always came back. I spent the next 2 days organizing the recall vote. With the signatures verified, we were locked in for a special session the following week. I printed flyers and, with Greg's help, distributed them door to door. We didn't just want her removed, we wanted the entire board cleaned out. Her cronies had let her run unchecked for too long. Then something strange happened. On Wednesday evening, I got an email from a woman named Sonia Delgado. She introduced herself as a former HOA board member who had resigned 2 years ago for personal reasons. But the way she worded it made me pause. She said she had information about misconduct involving Harriet and the Community Development Fund. We met at a coffee shop off the main boulevard. Sonia looked tired, like someone who'd held on to a secret for too long. She slid a manila folder across the table without saying a word. Inside were copies of internal HOA financial reports, email printouts, and a spreadsheet that made my stomach turn. More than $30,000 had quietly disappeared from the Community Improvement Fund over the past year and a half. The paper trail was sloppy. Harriet had used vague entries like consultation fees and landscape analysis, but the same private contractor name kept popping up: Marlowe Property Solutions. "Never heard of them," I said. "That's because it's not real," Sonia whispered. "It's a shell company." She listed her nephew as the registered agent. I tried to bring it up to the board, but 2 members weren't on it. When I threatened to go public, Harriet told me she'd sue me for defamation and breach of fiduciary duty. "Why come forward now?" "Because you've already cracked the dam. I just needed someone else to put a hole in it." That night, I scanned every document and sent copies to the city's fraud investigation unit. Then I called a friend from college who now worked in the district attorney's office. His exact words were, "This is the kind of thing we love to sink our teeth into." By Friday, Harry was back in the neighborhood. She stepped out of a black sedan, wearing oversized sunglasses and a scarf like she thought she was in a spy movie. 2 of the more nervous board members trailed behind her, whispering like school kids. She didn't come to my door. She didn't have to. Instead, she filed a motion with the HOA to suspend the recall vote on procedural grounds, claiming the signatures were collected under false pretenses and coercion. That maneuver bought her 72 hours. I expected that. What I didn't expect was the locksmith showing up at my driveway Saturday morning. "Order to change out the community lockboxes," he said, pointing to the oversized brass mailbox cluster near the street. "Work order signed by HOA leadership." I checked the paperwork. It had Harriet's name and signature on it. She was trying to cut me off from my mail now. I walked straight over to her house. The ceramic frog was still there, quietly humming away, its signal jammer now a symbol of poetic justice. Harriet opened her front door before I even knocked. "Martin," she said, voice like syrup over gravel. "You've caused quite a bit of disruption. I hope you're proud of yourself. You're tampering with federal mail systems now." She tilted her head. "You don't have any proof of that." "Funny. That's exactly what you said last time. You think you're clever, don't you?" "I think I know a falsified invoice when I see one. So does the DA's office." Her eyes twitched. Just for a second. Then she shut the door in my face. That night, I ran a deep search on Marlowe Property Solutions. Sonia had been right. The LLC was registered in a neighboring county under the name Curtis Holcomb, Harriet's nephew. I found a LinkedIn profile that listed him as a consultant in residential zoning optimization, which is corporate gibberish for guy who cashes checks without doing anything. I sent the info to my contact at the DA's office, who looped in their financial crimes team. They found that the same LLC had been paid from 2 other HOA funds in nearby neighborhoods. Harriet had been running the same scam in multiple places, using her position to funnel money into fake consultations. By Monday morning, 2 unmarked cars pulled into the neighborhood. Plainclothes investigators. They went straight to Harriet's house. She didn't answer the door this time, but they had a warrant. I watched from my porch as they carried out 2 desktop computers, a stack of white binders, and a fireproof lockbox. The rest of the board resigned the next day. The recall vote didn't just go forward, it turned into a full-blown reformation session. 73 residents showed up, more than double the usual attendance. We voted in a new president, treasurer, and secretary. Greg got elected to the board after giving a speech about flags and freedom that made someone cry. I didn't run for anything. I just wanted my Wi-Fi to work. But the fallout wasn't done. A week later, I got a call from the state's HOA Oversight Commission. Apparently, they were launching a full-scale audit into every HOA Harriet had ever worked with. Her name had popped up in 6 different communities over the past decade. Same pattern: sudden resignations, vague expense reports, and consultants no one ever saw. When they asked if I'd testify, I said yes. I walked into that courtroom with a stack of evidence and a calm mind. Harriet was there too, pretending to look bored. She wore a navy blazer like she was on trial for insider trading, not community sabotage. But the prosecutors laid it all out. The fake invoices, the shell company, the misuse of HOA funds, the harassment of residents, the illegal tampering with communications infrastructure. When they played the security footage of her crouching at the utility box with wire cutters, the jury didn't even blink. She was found guilty of multiple counts of wire fraud, mail interference, and misuse of association funds. She cried when the verdict was read, but not a single person in the courtroom looked sympathetic. The state froze her assets. Her house went up for sale within a month. The ceramic frog stayed. Greg painted it gold and planted it next to the community sign right under the new motto we voted on: respect, not rules. The HOA's new leadership abolished half the nonsense policies Harriet had created. No more required mulch color. No more fines for unsanctioned pumpkins. And best of all, no more unannounced inspections from clipboards and khakis. My internet hasn't cut out once since then. And sometimes, when I'm working late and glance out the window, I see neighbors talking to each other instead of avoiding eye contact. The kid with the scooter?
He's got a paper route now.
Greg helps him roll the bundles. Harriet's house eventually sold to a young couple who opened a small bakery in town. They gave me a discount card as a thank you for the Wi-Fi story they'd heard from 6 different people. I keep it on my desk, right next to the flash drive, just in case I ever need a reminder that even the most tangled systems can be unraveled one wire at a time. 2 months passed, but the ripple effects from Harriet's downfall hadn't stopped moving. If anything, they were just beginning to reach the shore. Once the new HOA board settled in, they started digging through the association's digital archives. The files were a mess. Password-protected PDFs, mismatched Excel sheets, and a handful of handwritten notes scanned into JPEGs. Most of the documents had been stored on a password-locked desktop that Harriet had claimed was for HOA use only. It had been seized by investigators during the warrant execution, but the board now had access to a mirrored drive provided by the DA's office. That's when the real story started to unfold. Greg called me on a Tuesday evening. I was watching a documentary about supply chain vulnerabilities and half listening to the narrator when my phone rang. Greg's voice was tense, not angry, just tight in a way that made me sit up. She used HOA funds to purchase surveillance equipment. I paused the TV. Surveillance for what? I asked. Not cameras for the clubhouse or the park or even street safety. These were hidden cameras, license plate readers, microphones. Where were they installed? That's the thing. They weren't. The invoices say they were, but when we checked, every location listed nothing. And one of the receipts shows a delivery address that matches her nephew's warehouse in Oak Ridge. I pinched the bridge of my nose. So, she's not just skimming money. She's stockpiling surveillance gear and funneling it off-site. Looks like it. Greg told me the board had already filed a supplemental report with the DA's office. This wasn't just financial fraud anymore. It was bordering on unlawful surveillance and misuse of private data. They also discovered a backup USB in a drawer labeled HOA Legal that contained audio files, recordings of board meetings that were never disclosed to the public. I didn't like where this was heading. That Friday, I got a knock on my door from someone I'd never seen in the neighborhood before. He was tall, with a clipboard, a badge clipped to his belt, and sunglasses that never left his face. Mr. DeWitt? That's me. Detective Jules Moreno, Cybercrimes Division. Mind if I ask you a few questions about Harriet Holcomb? I stepped aside and let him in. He didn't waste time. We've recovered a drive from her nephew's property. It contains logs of remote access attempts to multiple smart home devices throughout the neighborhood. Thermostats, doorbell cameras, even baby monitors. My stomach dipped. Was she spying on residents? We believe so. The software she used is a modified admin toolkit originally designed for tech support professionals, but it was altered to allow passive access without system alerts. We're still tracing how deeply she got into each home network. I leaned against the kitchen island. You're telling me she was running a digital peeping Tom operation out of her HOA position? We're not ruling anything out. But it appears she used her authority to pressure several residents into providing Wi-Fi passwords under the guise of troubleshooting community interference. Wait, I said, you think she was intercepting data? That's what we're trying to determine. So far, we've identified packet logs being stored on an encrypted server. It looks like she was collecting metadata connection times, device IDs, and in some cases, GPS data from smart devices. I hadn't even realized my hands had curled into fists. Why would she need GPS data? Moreno removed his sunglasses. We think she was tracking movement patterns. When people left for work, how long they were away. She may have been using it to identify which homes were vulnerable. Vulnerable for what? That's where things get worse. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a printed map. Several homes were marked with red dots. Mine was one of them. We've had reports from 3 nearby neighborhoods, same pattern. Residents would leave for vacation, and within 24 hours, their homes were broken into. No forced entry. No alarms triggered. Only specific valuables taken: hard drives, safes, personal documents. You think she was orchestrating burglaries? We can't prove she arranged them, but someone was using the information she gathered to pick ideal targets. And in each case, the HOA president or board leaders had ties to Harriet's consulting group. I stared at the map. The dots weren't random. They followed a pattern: homes on corners, homes with alley access, homes like mine. Why didn't she ever hit this place? I asked, gesturing around. Moreno folded the map. We think the signal jammer messed with her system. It may have blocked whatever remote access she had. I let out a slow breath. So my petty revenge actually saved me. Looks that way. The next day, the story hit the local news. HOA spy ring under investigation, the headline read. It described a growing list of neighborhoods where private data had been harvested under the guise of homeowner compliance. The article didn't name Harriet directly yet, but the pieces were coming together. Sonia Delgado reached out again. This time she had something new. A set of emails between Harriet and a man named Bradley Keene. Former law enforcement turned security consultant. He'd been paid through Marlowe Property Solutions to install perimeter awareness systems in 4 communities. Only those systems didn't exist. The money was real, though. More than $60,000 spread across 6 accounts. Who's Keene? I asked her over the phone. Used to work in asset recovery. Got fired for falsifying reports. Harriet met him at some HOA conference in Fresno 4 years back. Think he helped with the break-ins? I think he coordinated them. I passed the info to Moreno. Within 48 hours, Keene was arrested outside a rental property in Burbank. When police searched the place, they found 3 laptops, a lock-picking kit, and a notebook full of addresses, some of which were mine and my neighbors. The next arrest came fast. Curtis Holcomb, Harriet's nephew, was picked up after trying to withdraw $30,000 in cash from a credit union in Sacramento. Apparently, he'd gotten wind of the investigation and tried to disappear. Harriet, however, had vanished. Detective Moreno sent out a warrant. Her last known location was a motel near the Nevada border, but by the time authorities got there, she was gone. Her car was abandoned in the lot, keys still in the ignition. The front desk clerk said she checked in under the name Sandra Dell. She was officially a fugitive. The neighborhood was quiet in a way it had never been before. Not just peaceful quiet, like a community holding its breath. The new HOA board issued a statement reassuring residents that financial restitution would be pursued for everyone affected. A forensic accounting firm had been hired to track every cent Harriet and her associates had stolen. Greg, and I sat on his porch that night, watching the sun dip behind the rooftops. She planned this for years, he said, shaking his head. Built it like a machine. Yeah, I said. But she built it too perfectly. Too many moving parts. Eventually, something always jams. He nodded, then asked, "What happens if she never gets caught?" I looked down the street, where the golden ceramic frog still sat under the newly installed smart lamppost.
She will.
People like her always think they're smarter than the system. But they always forget someone built that system. And some of us know how to take it apart. He raised his glass. To frogs and firewalls. I clinked mine against his. Across the street, a group of kids rode their bikes up and down the sidewalk, laughing. One of them had rigged his handlebars with a blinking light strip. No one stopped him. No one told him it violated some outdated guideline. The neighborhood had changed. And somewhere out there, Harriet was running out of places to hide. The first real break in Harriet's manhunt came from a place no one expected, a self-storage facility 12 miles outside Phoenix. Detective Moreno called me on a Thursday, voice sharper than usual.
He didn't waste time.
She rented a unit under a fake ID, he said. Security camera caught her just before dawn 2 days ago. We're sweeping the area now. I was at work, but I stood up from my desk anyway. Did she leave anything behind? She left everything behind. Maps, burner phones, a laptop, and a hand-drawn diagram of your neighborhood with certain homes marked in red ink. He didn't say which homes.
He didn't have to.
That night, I went to the emergency HOA board meeting at the community center. It was standing room only. The board president, a CPA named Valerie who'd taken over after the recall, stood at the front of the room with an easel-sized printout of documents recovered from Harriet's unit. No one talked. No one dared. Valerie pointed to a spreadsheet listing names of residents next to coded entries like routine, unattended, and archive. These are notes she compiled over the last 20 months, Valerie said. We believe she was tracking when people left town who had weak security systems and who had valuables worth targeting. A man in the back raised his hand. What the hell does archive mean? Valerie looked directly at me. We think those were the homes she already accessed. I didn't react. You learn to keep your expression dead still when you've dealt with cybercrime cases involving breached systems and exploited networks. But my heart had already started pounding. After the meeting, I stayed behind while most residents filed out in stunned silence. Valerie approached me with a folder in hand. There's something else, she said. We found a letter. Well, more of a manifesto. It wasn't addressed to anyone, but it reads like she was trying to justify herself. I opened it. The first line read, "People only follow rules when they're afraid not to." The rest of it was a twisted set of rationalizations. Harriet believed communities fell apart without her control. She wrote about rot in the system, how she had to cleanse the neighborhood of what she called digital recklessness. Apparently, anyone with unapproved smart devices, home automation, or non-standard mesh networks was on her personal blacklist. She saw herself as a kind of data purist, trying to restore analog order to what she viewed as a corrupted suburb. She's unhinged, I said quietly. She's also getting sloppy, Valerie replied. That diagram? It had a date. A future date. 3 days from now. Marked with a red circle and the word reset. Moreno confirmed it the next morning. The laptop contained code for a remote access script designed to trigger a series of coordinated device failures. It was scheduled to launch at exactly 3:15 a.m. on Saturday. She was going to try to wipe out the network infrastructure of the entire neighborhood. The city's cybercrime division immediately moved to isolate our local grid. They dispatched a forensic IT team to every home with a router Harriet had ever accessed. We were issued temporary firewall devices, small, black boxes that filtered all outgoing data until the threat passed. I volunteered to help install them door to door. Greg came with me, toolbox in hand. At the fourth house, a woman answered the door with a baby on her hip and mascara streaks under her eyes. She had no idea any of this was happening. No one had told her she was on the reset list. Greg handed her the firewall box and got to work. I stood near the door, watching the street. I wasn't expecting Harriet to show up in person, but the air felt wrong, like the whole neighborhood was holding its breath again. At 2:47 a.m. on Saturday, the power dipped for 3 seconds. Only 3. But every house with a backup generator kicked on instantly. Emergency floodlights flickered to life. My firewall device beeped once and displayed a green light. That meant it had blocked the attack attempt. The script had failed. Moreno confirmed it the next morning. Harriet's code had been triggered through a remote server routed through 3 VPNs. But the firewall boxes caught it. None of the smart systems were compromised. Not a single camera, thermostat, router, or control hub went down. But one house lit up with an outbound signal at the exact moment the script launched. The house Harriet used to own. It had been vacant for months. The new owners were out of town. But the inside was still staged furniture, appliances, and apparently a relay node hidden in the attic. It was the Trojan horse. The detectives found a modified signal amplifier disguised inside a vintage radio. It had been broadcasting a beacon that linked to Harriet's remote server. The signal had quietly pulsed for weeks, waiting for the right time. The investigators shut it down. But the bigger question remained. Where was she now? That answer came from a FedEx driver. He recognized her from a news article and reported that she'd signed for a package at a roadside motel in Flagstaff under the name Gwen Lister. She'd left in a blue SUV with stolen plates, headed east. Highway Patrol picked her up near the border of New Mexico.
She didn't resist.
She didn't say a word. She just sat in the back of the cruiser with her hands folded like she was waiting for something. The trial took 6 months. Harriet was charged with conspiracy to commit cyber sabotage, wire fraud, unlawful surveillance, and attempted interference with public infrastructure. The evidence was overwhelming: documents, devices, testimony, even her own handwritten notes. I testified on the 3rd day. The prosecutor asked me what I thought motivated her. She wanted control, I said. Not for the sake of order. For the sake of power. She didn't care about community. She just wanted to be the only one holding the map. When they read the verdict guilty on all counts, she didn't blink. Just stared at the wall like she was reading something no one else could see. She was sentenced to 18 years without parole. Her nephew and Keen both cut deals in exchange for full confessions and restitution. The DA's office seized their accounts, vehicles, and the last 2 properties they'd bought using stolen funds. The HOA received a settlement grant from the state to help rebuild trust and security. We used it to install a neighborhood-wide fiber mesh system controlled by the residents, not the board. Each home got a secure, independent node. No centralized control. No more choke points. The ceramic frog was replaced with a community garden. The kids painted a sign for it. Frogwatch Grove. Greg and I still sit on his porch sometimes. But now we talk about things like solar incentives, not surveillance conspiracies. Valerie stayed on as HOA president. She's transparent, fair, and allergic to nonsense. The board now has term limits, open financial disclosures, and a rule that no meeting can end with more than 2 action items. Keeps things simple. The neighborhood changed. Not just on paper. In the way people waved to each other. In the way they knocked on doors instead of sending passive-aggressive notes. In the way no one was scared to plug in a new device or install a smart lock. I kept the firewall device on a shelf in my office. Not because I needed it anymore, but as a reminder of how close things came to falling apart. Harriet tried to build an empire of control using nothing but fear and signal strength. She forgot that communities can be wired differently. With trust. With resilience. With neighbors who know how to fight back.